Hello, and welcome to Getting It.
The conversation where we try to understand life just that little bit more.
My name's Dan.
And my name is Saban.
We're both medical students based in London.
And in this episode, we have an impromptu discussion on willpower and self-control. We discuss the science and mechanisms behind willpower, the impact it has on our daily lives, and our personal tactics to remain disciplined and focused in our day-to-day tasks and habits. I also want to add a short disclaimer that this was a conversation that happened out of the blue as we were just kind of discussing what to talk about in this episode. I've been reading into the topic of willpower, self-control, and focus over the past few weeks, but I've been monthly practicing that kind of stuff over the past 3 to 4 years, so I just have quite an interest in it. So the topic is something I'd like to talk about in more depth and in a more structured manner. However, we still thought we covered some interesting points in this conversation. So the main thing I want to address right now is the fact that I state a few facts and figures here and there, and I also cite some studies and references from books that I've recently read, but I was going off the top of my head during this. So it's likely that the numbers may be slightly off or that I misreferenced something somewhere at some point. But the reason I didn't bother pulling up my notes is because they're still very primitive and I haven't properly condensed them and I haven't properly condensed my ideas or done a deep dive into the studies yet. So it didn't really hold much value to try and bring up my notes. But once my notes and research are a bit more refined and I've formulated my opinions and ideas more thoroughly, then we'll do a more structured and focused episode, or even potentially have a mini series on the topic of willpower, focus, self-control, ego depletion, and all of that stuff. So editor Saban, so the person you're listening to right now, will interrupt and correct my past self if there are any major corrections to be made, but I think they'll be relatively far and few between. So I'll leave it there for you to enjoy the actual episode, and it basically just gets straight into it. So yeah.
I want to give it a proper reply. So I only like really replying to people when I'm sat down, and I kind of designate time in my day to reply to people. It's kind of like replying to emails. You wouldn't reply to an email sort of to I don't know, just saying like, yeah, no worries. Well, you might, to be fair, but
yeah, it depends on the email.
Yeah, what I'm saying here is, yeah, for me, I will not turn on my notifications, because if I see text coming through, I feel obliged to reply in that moment, and then I'm not doing what I'm doing as well, and also I'm not replying completely properly either. I'd rather just sit down and go, okay, let me check my messages, and then just reply to people. If it's completely urgent, like when I go on my phone every few minutes, to be honest, and if I see a message that's like urgent, or like they need to know, like, you know, Dan, are you free in an hour or something, then I will reply. But if it's something that I can just reply to later, I will usually just wait until I'm sat down and then give it a proper reply. That's how I do it, but maybe that needs to change. I started doing that because of uni, because of studying. So I started doing that like a year ago, because I think it's similar to you. As soon as my phone goes off while I'm studying, then I don't know, I just go and check it, and it's like an excuse to not work. I'm always looking for an excuse to stop studying, unfortunately.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, as in we all are. So I read that book, I told you about it, Willpower by Roy Baumeister. I'm currently doing all of my notes on it, so I don't want to go into too much detail, because otherwise it'll just kind of like take away from when I actually do talk about the book. But yeah, he talks a lot about distraction, and obviously it's all about willpower and self-control and stuff. And it all comes from the same kind of pool and areas of the brain in terms of all of that. So even resisting, say, a certain temptation or desire. So even if my phone is there, like whilst I'm studying, it's there, it's within reach, and I'm trying to prevent myself from going on it, that is using a certain amount of willpower to resist that temptation. But then studies have shown when people are tempted with something, it's a classic radish and cookie experiment, where one group, but both of the groups have radish and cookies in front of them, and they haven't eaten for the whole day. One group is only allowed to eat the radishes, and one group can eat whichever one they want. And obviously the people who were only allowed to eat the radishes had to enforce some kind of self-control, willpower to resist eating the cookies. And some people barely only managed to resist eating the cookies. And these were all adults. These weren't children. There's a similar experiment not similar, but there's an experiment in children regarding like temptation with food and stuff. But yeah, and then after that they've eaten and stuff, then they sent both groups to do a puzzle. And that puzzle was the puzzle was actually impossible to solve. It was an impossible puzzle, but it's a classic thing they use for willpower and like to see how long they would attempt like just going like doing the puzzle before they would give up. And everyone who had to resist the radishes, resist the cookies, gave up twice as fast.
I have a question for you then.
Okay.
Genuinely, do you think? Okay, you know, if you gave everyone a ranking for their willpower or like a score, like a global score for willpower,
where would I put mine?
Yeah, genuinely. I know it's a hard question, but do you think you have above average willpower, let's say in your year group, or let's say in the people you know, like in your social circles? Have you noticed that compared to most people you interact with, your willpower is quite good? Or do you think your willpower is not as good?
Okay, so in the way I think about it, it's actually a bit of a paradox because I mentioned it to you briefly earlier on, like a few days ago, like a few weeks ago, where I believe that we should use less willpower, not more, in our day-to-day lives. And this book has kind of confirmed that because I'd been reading around like this author's stuff. And that's kind of where I started getting the actual solidified idea of we should use less willpower, not more. And then I look back at on my years and all of the advice I'd kind of, because I've been into the whole lifestyle design and all this habit formation and, you know, just massive productivity, try and optimize everything in my life as much as I can. And obviously it requires some level of willpower, but I realized that, and when I try and give advice to people, like I'd see where they were kind of like, say, flopping and where some people were doing better. And I realized that the main kind of advice I was giving was to actually put things into place in your life so you don't even have to implement willpower in the first place. Don't let your day-to-day life come across those temptations you find hardest. So one massive thing is the whole nutrition and junk food and stuff, which is obviously like a major part where I look at. I since the beginning, I've always done this thing when I started changing my diet radically to just improve health. The first thing I did was I just never bought junk food. I never let it in the house.
Because then you're not having to employ the willpower to resist
exactly.
it.
So then if something's not in my kitchen, the amount of resistance, just not having it within close reaching distance in the fridge or just in my room somewhere, to have to go to Tesco, and in England it's always wet and cold, to do that and then buy something, then come all the way back and then eat it and then regret it afterwards. That's such a big hurdle to jump. The amount of willpower you'd need for me to go over that, go outside, get it. Like the temptation would have to be next level.
A bit disrespectful to England's weather, but okay.
Yeah, but
we move.
To be fair, that's actually massive. Sometimes I just won't do groceries for a few days if it's just I can't be bothered to go out.
You're just mad at the weather.
Yeah, I'm just like, man, I see we had to go out like all windy, wet.
Just quickly before you keep going, it brings me back to what you were saying about keeping your notifications off on your phone. It's the exact same thing, isn't it? If you don't see the notification kind of come up on your phone, you're not having to use willpower to resist opening it because you're not aware that it's happened. In the same way, if you don't have junk food in your fridge or in your drawer, you don't have to resist eating it. It's not exactly the same, but it's the same sort of idea, and eliminating the need for willpower to an extent, which is interesting. I've never thought about it that way.
It's actually almost identical in terms of comparing those two things, the food and your phone. So I think for us, because we've always kind of been doing it just because, but out of necessity, like studying and whatever other priorities we have, we couldn't like, man,
it's like,
I can't think of the word. We couldn't, wow, I've had the biggest brain fart. What is the word? It's such a simple word. Basically, we didn't have the option, right? We had to somehow block out our phone because we just couldn't afford the distraction out of whatever work we're doing if there's an assignment or whatever. So we slowly built that habit to just always have our phone on Do Not Disturb and just kind of get out of the habit of always having to check it. But before even putting it on Do Not Disturb, when I like help, like say my brother or someone help with distractions, my brother's always on his phone. Saying on Do Not Disturb is one thing, but having the phone out of reach is a different thing. And like just you can't access it because my phone is pretty much always on Do Not Disturb. If I'm working on something and there's a slight resistance, if my phone is next to me on my table, no notification has come through. But the first thing I do is I tap the screen on my phone to turn it on and see if there's anything that's come through. Just
really quickly, that's exactly what I do too. And I was going to bring it up to you in a minute. When I'm working, if I'm, I don't know, like if I'm going through a worksheet or I'm trying to figure out and like how to interpret a certain, I don't know, type of ECG. As soon as I stop understanding something, the moment it's a bit difficult, or I'm writing an email and I don't quite know how to word a sentence, a minute later, I find myself on Sporkle, or like I find myself
Sporkle.
I find myself doing like a countries quiz, or like going through Twitter, and I don't. It's not a conscious thing. So is that a very common thing? Do you think?
It's a massively common thing. That's the thing that's taken over like all of our lives, basically, in terms of just
because it really
constant
frustrates me.
Yeah, it's massive.
And what I do is, I keep interrupting your flow here. I'm sorry about that, but it's just I don't want to forget what I was going to say. In that, for me, I kind of do it, and then I'm like reloading my willpower, kind of like while I'm going through Twitter, it reloads. When I go back, I've got probably like a battery life of like 10 minutes where I could get through something that's not fun to read or not fun to work out, and I'll do it, until I sort of expire in my willpower again. It's not good. I recognize that it's not good, but that's the problem.
Do you know what's really sad? Do you know what the average attention span on a singular task at any one time is in our current days?
Let me try and guess. Well, any task.
Yeah.
So
before you get
driving?
distracted and doing okay. So say if you need to write up an email, how long would it be before you get distracted and start doing something else?
I think for me personally, probably 15, 20 minutes before I start.
Yeah, you're in the top infinite percentile.
Oh, okay, maybe. As in, if I had to write an email, I could do it. After 15 minutes, I'm pretty sure I'd be checking my phone and stuff.
Yeah. The actual average attention span is 40 seconds.
40 seconds?
It's sad.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, as in, I think that probably applies to me, to be honest.
Yeah, and in a lot of time, like, so when I'm having a bad day, I'm like that as well. Like, so when I'm doing my Anki, just studying flashcards, I'd study around like 4 flashcards, and then something comes to mind, or I just go onto my phone, onto Instagram, or just the like shortcut to open up YouTube is like muscle memory. I do it so fast.
Just the Control T, Y, Enter.
Yeah, like, or even, I don't even have my browser open, just to open up like Chrome or Brave or whatever you use, like just open it up straight onto YouTube so fast. Like, and I don't even realize what I've done until I'm looking at which video to click on.
Yeah. That's the thing. I'm so unaware of what I'm doing. So even I say 15 minutes, I'd go with writing an email. But when I think about it, I am going for a minute and then thinking about something else, and then I'm constantly tempted to do. I'm almost looking for an excuse to not do it. I'm almost trying to find a reason not to. So I might be able to go for 15 minutes without succumbing to that and going, oh wait, okay, I actually need to check if a delivery's arrived or something. But yeah, within every minute or two, I think there's an idea coming into my head. I'm not completely focused, and it really annoys me. It happens while I'm reading as well. Often,
okay, yeah. I've read Willpower by Baumeister, and I'm currently in the process of reading Hyperfocus by Chris Bailey. And now, obviously, one's about focus, one's about willpower and self-control to facilitate focus and stuff. So the two books go like hand in hand together, really. And I think just learning the science behind it, or just looking at the studies and seeing what the data shows. I was already pretty aware when like my focus is dropping, or I'm just I'm not being able to control myself in terms of like desires or bad food or whatever, just like always distracted. I was already pretty self-aware, I think more than most people, just because I've been doing this whole thing and always paying attention to my habits and what I'm doing every time, just to try and improve my lifestyle as a N=1 experiment on myself, basically. But yeah, reading these books has just kind of brought some things to life, and I'm like, wow, this is exactly what I've been thinking. But just seeing it there is like, it's so good. Like, I don't really want to talk about them too much because I still need to write up my notes and assimilate all the links of the ideas together before I can like do those books justice in terms of trying to explain what they're getting at. But I would highly recommend reading them. They're both pretty easy reads as well. One's like 200 pages in total. I think Hyperfocus, Willpower's like 280, but they're both fairly just easy to read anyway.
And what context is it mainly? Is it general lifestyle, like willpower in your general life?
Yeah. So in that book, he speaks, he writes about willpower in the context of, say, dieting or just distractions throughout day-to-day life, staying focused on a particular task, resisting different temptations. And he talks about our reserve of willpower, where it all comes from, how it works in the brain. And then he, at the end in his last chapter, he talks about different solutions you can start implementing to help control all of these, different, potential weak spots that we have in maintaining willpower throughout the day. But in the end, he kind of got to the point, he didn't say it explicitly, but he kind of came to the same conclusion that I kind of have, where, so it's all mostly based off like a couple of studies, where the German beeper study and the child's marshmallow study. I won't really go into detail of them now, but in the end, they found that the people who who ended up being most successful out of those are the ones who actually designed their lifestyle in a way that they wouldn't really have to come across their temptations that much. Even to the point of, if you are having, like, say, say if you're always, so me walking, so whenever I was going to like the Charing Cross Hospital campus, I'd have to walk through the Hammersmith station, like, you know, that weird shopping,
like a little shopping centre.
Yeah,
like
it's the Hammersmith Broadway.
Leon,
Walking through there, there's a Paul's Bakery and the Ben's Cookies right next to each other, and you have to just walk past it if you're going to go through the inside. Oh my God, like,
that is an exercise in willpower.
It is huge. But the thing is that when I actually got to uni, I'd go to the cafe, usually just to get a coffee or something, or just, you know, chill, just wait until lecture started if I was a couple of minutes early. And quite frequently I would succumb and just buy something, either a coffee or just, you know, a chocolate bar or something, just because for me, those are like massive desires, the like fresh, like bakery kind of stuff, and then Ben's cookies as well. I'm basically a sucker for them. And I realized that whenever, like, I found it really hard in the first place to resist those, when I got to uni, like, or the campus, it was like I was just throughout the day, like, the next thing is just, if anyone's like, oh, do you want to go eat somewhere, like, at lunch, I just find it so much harder to even just say no to that, or just resist it, or get something, you know, what like pertains to my own values of nutritional guidance or whatever. I just find it harder, just because we're actually all running on the same amount of willpower. So what I said before about that radish and cookie experiment, those people were resisting, but then they were having to apply focus and willpower in a different task. Resisting and applying focus and willpower are different things slightly, but they're all running off the same tank.
How much do you think enjoying a task improves your willpower for it?
Okay, yeah. So the status of focus and stuff, that's slightly different. I haven't finished the hyper-focus book, but he, he hasn't really mentioned anything. I'm still quite early on in the book. But yeah, I think when you enjoy something, what it allows you to do is the amount of value you're getting from it motivates you to do it, essentially. And when you start doing it, the process of struggling, doing whatever task you're doing, if it's, you know, you're doing some artwork or you're writing something, or if you enjoy writing emails and you're in your zone writing emails, when you're in your zone and doing it, you're in a state of hyper-focus, is essentially what Chris Bailey calls it, where even if these distractions pop up, like, you don't really even, your senses don't even take it in. He wrote in his book that apparently we're taking in, so I don't know how true it is because I haven't looked at any of the references yet. Apparently we're taking in like 11 million bits as in like computer bits equivalent or whatever, or just bits in general of information in terms of our senses, or around 11 million or something.
Every
second.
Yeah. I ain't.
Huh?
I ain't.
Yeah. Do you know how much our brain can actually process?
No.
40.
Oh, 40
every second, our brain can only process 40 bits of information.
And
whether that's
that mean,
the equivalent of like a computer bit, I don't know, but I just think of like a singular piece of information or something.
Okay, so I've got a question.
Yeah.
For example, the clock ticking. I haven't noticed it until now, but now I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
I wasn't noticing it for the last 20 minutes.
Yeah,
half an hour
neither was I.
But now I do. Was that not counting as one of the bits before? So because I had the capacity to hear
that was one of the 11 million bits. Your brain was ignoring it out because it can only take in 40 and properly process 40. Obviously, these aren't hard numbers, but it's just, you know, around that. Basically, we can only...
Not like your brain gets to 39. It's like, one more bit available.
It's like, that's why when we go like in adrenaline fight or flight mode, it's like the state of anxiety is when you're over processing all of those things. What's the thing where like hypersensitivity to certain senses, that's when you start taking in too much information, and then you like, obviously we would go mental if we're just trying to take in all that information all the time. So, or like trying to process all of that information. So that's why everything's limited. It's like, you know, with our nose or whatever, our brain can actually see our nose, but we don't see our nose all the time.
Or our tongue in our mouth when we're reading and stuff. Our tongue's just sitting there. But
wait, can we... Oh, right, as in the sensation. I thought you were talking about seeing our tongue whilst reading. I was
sorry,
like,
no.
you got some weird reading technique, man.
What, you're just blocking out the sight of your tongue?
Yeah. All of those weird senses. It's same with clothes. When you put them on, you feel them initially, but then, you know, the changes in the different, because you have the different type of sensory nerves, you end up ignoring and feeling it. So then, you know, what's constant, you don't feel it, but then now
changing it, you feel it. Or like if the wind goes through or something.
Yeah. But that's a sudden change, right? So you're designed to pick up those because that could be potential danger.
But you've always got the capacity to like zone back into that and feel it again. Like now I'm feeling, yeah. And anyone listening to this is like, oh, my socks.
Yeah. However, the thing is, our space to be able to concentrate on something is, or like the amount of focusing ability. I think he calls it attentional memory in the book, hyperfocus. I think he calls it that. But basically, it's your working memory, right? How much your RAM. Right, how much can you have going on at one point?
Yeah.
It's finite. Same in a computer. I have 16 gigs of RAM in my laptop. I can only hold 16 gigs of constant background applications working. Same in our brains.
How different are different people's RAM capacities?
It can vary, but as in there isn't a hard and fast value on it. But you can kind of put a generalized kind of thing on it where you have, habitual, automatic tasks. You have, fairly easy, mundane tasks. And then you have complex tasks. So your super automated ones can be like breathing or walking, same like and chewing gum. That's why we can walk and chew gum, and that takes almost zero or like a very small amount in our working, capacity. But then you add reading into the mix, right? So now you're trying to read, chew gum, and walk. You might start chewing your gum slightly slower or something, or you might start walking slower because your brain there's now a bigger buffer zone to be able to process all of the information. Okay, a classic one is, you must have done this. You're driving, you got your music on, and you're just driving, and then you get you're coming close to your destination, you're in unfamiliar roads, and what do? You turn down the music.
Yeah.
Because you need to focus more, you need stuff like, you need to pay more attention, you need to pay more focus on it.
Blocking out.
So you're blocking out another input, another thing that could be taking up your RAM. So then the other senses and processes now take up more of it, so it can be more effective when working. That's why when we're driving, it's almost automatic. Maybe initially when we sit down, we reversing out. After that, we don't even have to think about where we're going. We're just going. If it's going home or somewhere, you just drive.
Muscle memory.
Yeah, you've probably done that thing where you're like, man, I've just been on 4 roundabouts in a row and I wasn't paying attention. How am I not dead? Like, that's basically your habit working. But then, suddenly, so like some cyclist comes up, right, next to a roundabout, and you're like, okay, this is going to be, you have to pay more attention. So you slow down, you pay more attention. You maybe stop listening to your music as intently. You stop taking it in, or whatever you were listening to, podcast, audiobook. And your focuses shift. So everything has a finite space. So that's why we can do things that don't really require much like energy in that sense, like washing the dishes, and I can listen to an audiobook. So 90% of my effort is actually going to comprehending what that audiobook is saying.
You're an autopilot, basically.
Yeah, but the washing the dishes is just like, I'm just doing it. That's taking a very small amount. So you have to so you can do, you have to break out. You can't do 2 complex tasks ever, because a complex task would usually require nearly all of your brain power or whatever. But you can do, so this is the whole thing with multitasking. We can multitask, but only with simple things that don't really, so even you can't multitask and write an email and, eat something, I don't know, and read a book at the same time. It's impossible, because I guess you're using, so, okay, there are a few criteria. They need to be using like different senses.
This is a funny one. Oh, sorry, keep going.
Yeah, so you need to be using different senses. The scale of the tasks have to be differentiated. You can't be doing if you're doing a complex task, whatever that might be, if you're writing something, trying to write, a passage or article, like all of your focus needs to be there. Or if you're reading something intensely, studying, all of your focus needs to be there. And this is quite interesting. I'll kind of get onto that topic later, but all of your focus needs to be there. If you're doing something more mundane or more automatic, that doesn't require so much effort, like, cutting your toenails. You can probably be listening to something or talking to someone at the same time. If you think about conversation, having a proper, deep, meaningful conversation requires a lot of brain power. You need to be listening to what they're saying and taking it in, and then you're also formulating your thoughts to, reply afterwards, maybe. However, what happens when someone's got their phone out and like doing it? The conversation, like your replies are maximized at like,
oh yeah.
Or like you're just taking, or you're like, sorry, can you say that again? Like,
you weren't able to.
Yeah, I mean, that frequently happens to me, right? You're saying something, you're just talking to me about something that's fairly deep, and you maybe say something, and then that sparks something in my head, and then I'm trying to like bring it out of my memory, or like, kind of formulate it into an actual thought that I can say. But all of my focus is gone that I'm now out of the conversation. That was a complex task. The conversation we were having was a complex task. I can't do both.
That makes
However,
sense.
if I was, say drinking water or eating, I can listen to you fine because it doesn't really require much brain power. But yeah, you want to say something funny.
No, it's not actually funny. I kind of bigged it up too much. It's it just goes along with what you were saying there. That I save to my watch later videos that I like to watch while I'm eating.
Yes.
So while I'm eating, I need to be watching something. It's like a little thing of mine. I think it's quite a common thing. I've seen a few relatable posts on social media. It made me feel a bit better about it. But yeah, like I will not start eating the food until the show is running. And I save things to on YouTube. I'm like, I don't have the attention span to watch this right now. Just watch it straight. But while I'm eating, for some reason, I will have the attention span to watch it. Does that kind of make sense? So
it's almost opposite of what I was saying. Now that you're doing something else, now you would do that.
Because I think it's to do with the focus thing. I'm not interested in it enough to be able to watch it, just like sit there and watch it. But if I'm eating, there's at least another avenue of information that I'm taking in. So if I'm kind of bored for a moment, I'm like, this is tasty, or like, let's get that bit of food. But there's one other element to it, which is that if I'm watching something like, trying to learn a language, often I'm trying to expose myself to videos in that language. If I'm watching a video in Mandarin or in French or something, I actually struggle to eat and watch that video. So I have to stop eating to watch that video. So I've stopped. I don't watch language videos while I'm eating now. I just sit there and watch it because it's so close to, you're talking about the two complex tasks.
Yeah.
Even though eating isn't normally a complex task, it's still too complex for me to take in fruitfully from the language video. Yeah,
it's that language video is so complex for you in that stage or whatever. Because I mean, you're learning a language is a complex task. You're trying to, assimilate the information. You want to know some words and put it into context, and like it's a massive brain task. Like that, you can't even do the simple act of just eating something like with a spoon.
I can't.
That actually happens to me as well. I tend to watch all of my videos at like 2 times speed or faster. If I'm eating something, and say if it's particularly messy, or say if I'm just eating. Some of the videos that I watch at say 2.5 times speed, I actually have to watch slower because my brain can't take it in as fast.
Okay, this brings me on to something that I really would like to know your opinion on.
Okay.
Which is listening to music while studying.
Yes, so when I said, this is quite interesting, when I was mentioning study, that's what I wanted to get onto.
Yes, okay.
Because I am against listening to music while studying.
Can't believe you. No, I'm joking. Carry on.
I mean, okay, I have certain biases against music before, but I used to do it myself.
You don't listen to music while studying, and you don't listen to music
I just don't listen to music.
But I get what you mean. Sorry, I'll let you.
Yeah, so this has kind of, solidified my opinion, because studying is a very intensive task, at least to study effectively. It's not always about studying for long periods of time. It's about studying effectively. And to study effectively, you're at like 99% capacity. You can just about breathe whilst doing it.
Even if you don't want to.
Yeah, okay. Just a quick side point, because I think you mentioned this was so fascinating when I read this. When we're even focused on something, the way we breathe and blink, our normal just autonomic kind of stuff changes. So when we're having a conversation, so this is the example he used. I was like, this is insane. You can't figure it out because you can never really pay attention to it. But people were observing people when they're having conversation and how they blink. When you're talking, oh man, the thing is, I'm noticing it right now in you. Oh my God, that's insane. Like, okay, so basically, when we're talking to each other, something like blinking is so automatic, but it's still, your brain is doing something in the subconscious to, blink. When we're having a conversation, when we blink when the other person has a natural pause or a breath or something, because that's the point where we're stopping to intake information from the other person that's speaking. So that's what, as soon as, when I had that slight pause to think about what I was going to say, you blinked at that very moment. That's what I was like.
Because I was my brain was being like, don't even blink, like just try and take it.
No, but the thing is, when I was actually talking and looking directly at you, you are not blinking right now.
Yeah.
But the thing is, now it's all in your conscious, so it's a massive like conscious thing. But just before, when I was getting onto the topic, like that's exactly what you were doing. You weren't talking when I was actually saying something, but as soon as I would pause or breathe, or when you're expecting a natural pause, that just in the way of like my cadence and whatever, you would blink at that moment.
So just to clarify that I understand. Oh, sorry, finish it first.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to. That's how finely tuned our ability to focus on different things at certain times are. When we're at that near maximal capacity, and I have a different theory. I don't know if he mentions it in the book later on because I haven't finished it, but I have this thing where I think we always like to be at this near maximal capacity of intaking information to a certain extent, or like not intaking information, but
some way
keeping our RAM as full as possible for most periods, to always just be doing something. That's why we get bored, because something needs to be taking on that thing. And that's kind of what leads to procrastination or whatever. Anyway, I have a few ideas. I haven't really formulated them properly, like in my own brain. But yeah, so when it comes to the music thing, while studying, proper studying should be near to 100%, to the point where I said you can barely breathe properly. When you're actually reading something and intaking it, you blink. That's why, structures of paragraphs and stuff is actually really important, because it helps us read. One, scan the page and know, like, have things blocked out into sections. But two, we blink when we reach the end of a sentence on the full stop, because that's like, in that time, that few milliseconds of blinking, that gives us extra time to process what was just said in that sentence.
So that's why, just to clarify, because I want to make sure I understand this. For example, when you were talking, the reason why I wasn't blinking while you were sharing your information was because I was trying to focus my thoughts on exactly what you were saying, and not even any sort of autonomic sort of subconscious actions. So then when you pause, it does give me time to do those actions that I just need to do before going back to listening. And so it's the same when that's interesting. When I write emails, I have a very particular method of writing emails, and I really like splitting up into paragraphs. Not stupidly, not like, halfway through a sentence, all right, new paragraph. But I really believe in, I'm a big fan of paragraphs and spacing things out. I always just word it, like if I'm giving someone email advice or my own opinion, I call it space to breathe. But I'm guessing that's kind of what you're alluding to.
Yeah, to a certain extent. It's more just, we can break down information in chunks better anyway. That's why everything's in like 3s or 4s, because that's like the max we can usually keep in our head at any one time. Say with phone numbers, you usually say your phone number in bunches of 3s. They're even written down in bunches of 3s or 4s.
Yeah.
Depending if you're like in the US or the UK. And yeah, just having the paragraphs helps us, chunk out bits of information. So that's that side of it. But when it comes to, so that was all just a side point. When it comes to studying, we should be at near 100% capacity, that we don't even have the ability to intake the sound of music. Because when I realized how subconscious it could be, that you're doing something, like your autonomic like blink is paused according to how you're taking in information and focusing, bro, it must be doing something. And the thing is, so I used to do it like, okay, the first thing is like, if there's any kind of lyrics, like, okay, that's like, just stop. Like, that's
you can't.
We are designed to pick up human speech and stuff. Like, you can't do anything, like you can't study effectively whilst having lyrical music in the background.
In your opinion?
In my opinion. Okay, I haven't read anything to like work for that.
I do agree.
Yeah.
I do agree.
But that's an important clarification. This is all in my opinion.
And me too. Me too.
But yeah, this is kind of what I've learned from experience, because I did used to try because everyone would do and have like the headphones in. Oh man, that's kind of cool. I want to do that. I've never really listened to music too much.
I do have a counterpoint though.
Okay, so let me just kind of get onto the classical music. So yeah, you can have that. That's better. I'd say classical music and stuff is just better. But again, there's variation. The problem is the variation, the changes, right? We pick up changes and stuff like that better. Even for one moment, like, the emotion in music changes, that emotion is going to change in you, right? Like, that's the whole point of music to do, like even at a subconscious level. Or say if it gets to a certain part that you really enjoy, you might just take a pause from studying and be like, let me just take this in. Or you might start tapping your foot to the beat and stuff. These are all things that are actually going to take out of your ability to put as much focus into what you are studying and taking in and assimilating that information. And like making the links between all the information to actually understand stuff intrinsically, like at the fundamental level. So yeah, that's probably the main reason why I'm against it. And having read that thing about how like strict this limit is on how much we can concentrate on certain things at a particular time, that's kind of, for me, strengthened I haven't finished the book. He might even mention this thing about studying and music or just studying in general. I haven't finished it. So I don't know what he has to say about that. But in general, what I've read so far does kind of support my own personal opinion, at least in my head.
The only thing, it all makes sense to me. But me personally, I do listen to orchestral music with one caveat, in that it can't be music I particularly enjoy, which sounds weird. But if it's a piece I know, then there's too much information coming from that piece that I recognize and distracts me. But there's a balance, right? Because for me, I'm usually studying in a public space. I'm usually studying in the library or on a train, or not usually, but I'm often studying in those areas. And there are distractions, other distractions. In the place where I sit usually at King's, it's not a silent room. I just like the room, but people are often talking. It's usually quite busy. When I put in orchestral music that I don't particularly like, so I don't hate it, but just something I'm not particularly noticing it. You're right. There are variations in emotion in the piece and things happening, the melody, and that can kind of stick in your head. And it definitely is a factor that detracts from what I'm getting from my studying. But at the same time, I think that overrides the distraction from people walking in and out of the room, people talking in the background, and sometimes doing my own other work from, I'm not in that class that happens to be being taught. And I find that allows me to, if I had to summarize it in like one sentence, it allows me to be in my own world while I'm working, and I'm not as influenced by what else is going on in the room, the outside. And I find it helps me, be in my own space a little bit better. So that's why I like to, at certain times, listen to my own orchestral music. And I find that sometimes it actually helps me learn a little bit better, but only in certain scenarios. If I'm at home working, I usually won't listen to music if it's just quiet at home. But I don't know if that should change in the future, but that's how I currently do it.
I get where you're coming from. I personally do actually like to work in a place where it's not so deadpan, like pin drop silence, and like absolutely no movement and stuff. Even like, so when I go to the library, I actually sit in a place where there's actually movement in front of me. I don't know why, because this is contradicting everything I've just said, basically. So it might be meant like addressed in the book, but there's something about it where I like having something in the background to just place my eyes on when I'm like in deep thought. Like when I'm like, so say if I'm in a cafe and working and stuff, after a few minutes, like, if I'm, in the zone of working, like once I'm actually in the zone and actually studying, like I forget I'm even in a cafe, like all the sounds just kind of block out. It's that, you're in the zone kind of thing. So that's your stimulation.
So you're saying that if you're studying at home, there's no stimulation outside of the actual work. There's complete silence. There's nothing to look at really. So you're saying, does it help you think better when there's at least something to look at and ponder? Like while you're pondering over a piece of work, if you're just looking at something, because I honestly get what you mean.
Yeah. Okay. So there are two things. So it kind of goes back to the point you said on enjoyment, right? It's the enjoyment factor of like, it's a different environment. It's something new. It's something to enjoy. Yeah. Just watching people is fun. It's interesting. Like just, you're sat in the corner of a cafe. You're just seeing people like walking in and out, interacting in weird ways, like different people. It's quite a nice kind of, pastime exercise just to sit back and just watch the world go by almost. So, but I think the main enjoyment factor is coffee. I'm like quite a coffee like enthusiast, which is why I like working in those places, or I like working straight after coffee because my mood is uplifted by if it's a nice cup. If it's bad, then it's counterproductive.
Can't work for the rest of the day.
Yeah, basically. There is that enjoyment factor. But the other thing I was going to say was we are very environmental creatures. We associate environment where we are, the time and place, to everything that happens in our life. That's why I'm actually a big proponent of like another like lifestyle thing I always do, and that I'm trying to slowly force my brother to do. I not force, but like encourage him to do, because at least it's worked like massively for me. Is I study in a particular place. I would do one particular type of work in a different place. Like, so if I'm going to do some, like, if I'm going to go through some lectures, I'll do it in one type of place. If I'm just going to study flashcards, I'll do it in a different kind of place. I won't. So I don't do any work so when I'm at uni, at least, I don't study in my bedroom, because I like to just go outside as much as I can. So I'd work only at uni. And when I'd come back, I would only sleep. I'd eat and sleep basically in my room. And then, so that's why whenever I stepped into like my room and I'd like, basically come back from uni, I was instantly hungry and I'd instantly start shutting down and start going to sleep, because it was just like clockwork. The environment's like, okay, I'm here. My brain just out of habit knows like, okay, I should start falling asleep and eating or whatever. Same thing is when I would like sit down in like my particular place, or I'd enter the library, my brain just from all the sounds, the smell, everything is just like, get into working zone. Like, so yeah, another thing. So when I was doing my UK CAT, right, was it the UK CAT or was it a different exam?
BMAT maybe.
I don't know. I want to say my UK CAT, but basically whenever I would study for my UK CAT.
It's called the UCAT now, isn't it?
Oh yeah, UCAT. Yeah, man, what the hell, man?
Kids these days.
What was it now? So UCAT.
UCAT. Don't know. For some reason,
Wasn't
they got
it
rid of the
United
I think it
Kingdom
was United
aptitude
Kingdom
test?
clinical admissions test. I think. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, where's the K gone?
So it's just now United or Universal Clinical Admissions Test.
I don't know. Anyway,
okay. When I was studying for the UK CAT back then,
the OG.
yeah, I would always do it whilst chewing gum.
I remember that.
Yeah. Do you remember when I was
Genuinely?
Yeah, back then I was trying to explain, like, we get into these habits that we associate things with one another. So I would always chew gum whenever I would sit down and study for the UK CAT. As soon as I was done, I would spit it out, and I wouldn't chew gum in any other kind of circumstance. And then after like a month and a half of doing this, I sat down once and just started chewing gum, and it would always be the same flavor, same company, so everything's consistent. There's no variation.
You did like an experiment on yourself.
Yeah, I've always liked doing this kind of stuff, and I've been doing it like since first year of uni as well, a lot more. Yeah, and from there I realized. So yeah, and then I was just in a normal situation, and I would have like that chewing gum, and then I just started feeling agitated, and I was like, I need to do something, but I don't know. I'm not in the right situation right now. And then like eventually, like I went down to study, and then I was just like, fine. And I was like straight in the zone, just instantly. And then afterwards, whenever I would just want to sit down and do the UK CAT, I could be in a bad mood or just not really feeling it, just feeling lazy in general. You know, those bad days where you usually just write off the day. I just started eating chewing gum, bang out the work. It was next level. And I actually did the same for my uni exams as well.
With chewing gum.
Yeah.
Same flavor. Can you plug it? What is it?
No, it's the extra white peppermint. I don't know, but yeah. The thing is, I don't think I was allowed. You're not allowed chewing gum in those exams, but maybe I don't know. I get extra time, so I get put into an extra room, so maybe I could get away with it. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah. So I put a lot of things down to environment and stuff like that, and I take it heavily into account. I only go into my bed to sleep. That's all. I don't sit in my bed to do anything or do any even general browsing.
I think that's good.
Because then next time I go into my bed, it's like, am I going into bed to sit on my phone, go on my phone for 3 hours? Or am I going into my bed to sleep?
It removes options, right?
Yeah, your brain is like, okay, lying down in bed, sleep. That's what I like to do singular things in singular locations or with singular associations.
It's tough to do that though and maintain that.
It is, but it's all about forming the habit. So complex things this loops all the way back to using less willpower, not more, for things. Because some things will just inevitably require willpower. So I didn't actually finish off that thing where I was like, I'd walk through Hammersmith Broadway and I'd find it tempting, and so I was like, just to remove that, I would just walk out the outside. So I just removed it now. So that's one thing to do. And now I just never had that temptation because I just force myself to walk out, and it's actually quicker. So I can, spare myself 30 seconds in bed or something.
You have to be in that cold British weather that you hate.
Yeah, that's true. But, compromises, I guess. Nothing's perfect.
Yeah.
In the end, so a lot of these complex things or things that we find difficult to resist and stuff, just make it into habits, because once things get formed into a habit, then we don't need as much brain power or willpower or working memory in our brain to do that particular task. Take driving. When you're first learning how to drive, bro, it's information overload. So much coordination and everything, or at least for manual and stuff, when people are learning for the first time. Like people are stalling, so many different factors they're trying to take into account. But most, I can pretty much guarantee whenever people are driving now, they never think about it.
Or after a few years of...
Yeah, or at least after a few years, once you've come across all the different kind of scenarios and stuff, it's just automatic, autopilot.
Yeah.
Right? That's the aim. You want to make all the hard things. That's why the massive thing of habits. You're forming all of these habits, or all of these self-help gurus are saying, just make this into a habit, make this a habit and stuff. Because then once it's a habit, it's automatic. You don't need to apply that willpower. And that frees up room, right? To then apply willpower to harder things or things you can't really take out of your life, right? Or work your way around.
You can take that to the extreme though, can't you? Because you have those people who, like CEOs, who just have one type of clothing in their drawer.
Yeah, that's literally me. Yeah. But okay, so that's another thing, like decision fatigue. That's a different aspect. And it's all related to willpower and focus and self-control. There's a really interesting study that I'll quickly mention. But so going to the gym, it's a habit loads of people struggle with. But once you make it into a habit, it becomes easier, because going to the gym and doing hard exercise is not a particularly enjoyable thing in the exact moment when you're like, doing a 5K and you're at the end, you want to, bro, like your throat hurts, your leg hurts. If you ever become aware of it, you're pushing your body to the next level. Say if you're doing some deadlifts or whatever, however heavy or whatever exercise resistance training, you're literally causing tears in your muscle. You're literally breaking down your body to, make it stronger and stuff. It is not a nice thing to be like, oh my God, gym. Like, obviously the thing is, the association you make with how good you feel, your body feels better, you sleep better, you eat better, all of that is positive association towards it. So then you keep doing it, or at least you'll think about it. But once it becomes a habit to just every morning or whatever time, just go to the gym and do your exercise or whatever. When the going to the gym for me is the hard part. Once I'm in the gym and I start exercising, I feel good, I feel pumped, like I start doing it. And then I feel good afterwards. So then like, I'm happy I managed to pull through it. But I took it from Matt Diavella called the 2-day rule. And I kind of just implemented it myself where like just naturally, I wouldn't let myself, like sometimes you just have a bad day. You're like, man, I just really don't feel like it. I'm just not feeling well. Like not like ill. Obviously if you're ill, then it's different. But I just feel kind of weak, just lazy. Don't really want to do much, and you are meant to go to the gym. Okay. And then you can leave it off for one day, but then you leave it off for a second, right? Maybe if you really need to finish a deadline, but don't leave it off for a third, because at that point you're breaking the habit that you formed of just going to the gym every day. And that's why I always say to like even go to the gym at the same time every day. So it's like I like to go in the morning because I like to get it out and done, like out of the way, and it gives me energy for the rest of the day as well. I literally just wake up and I'm like, okay, it's time to go to the gym, that kind of thing.
You don't have to fester over it.
Yeah, obviously I had to develop the habit. It was hard, it was difficult. I faltered, it went up and down, but once I got that habit formed, it was easier to maintain, basically. It was easier for me to keep going.
It's like going for that first, if you haven't been for a run in a while.
Yeah. And but then once you get back, so once you've had that habit before and you completely break it, say something happens, like obviously things are always...
Exams or something.
Yeah. You can formulate, I think it's a lot quicker to get back into the habit once you used to at least have the habit. I don't know if there's any science behind that, but from my experience, I find that all right. That's why sometimes when there is a really hard period where I've got a lot of deadlines or I'm doing a lot of freelance work, like say from the charities, and I'm just trying to put loads of things together and also study at the same time, just a busy period. I'm confident enough in myself, like, okay, if I let this go, like this habit of the exercise for like a week, I think I'll be able to get into it like pretty quick. It's difficult, but like in those first few days, it's like hard, but after that, I'm usually pretty solid. But I guess that comes with time and experience. It depends on yourself. It's something you just kind of have to figure out for yourself. But that interesting study I wanted to mention about decision fatigue and willpower and self-control and how they're all linked. Okay, so I personally do pretty much wear like the same thing every day. Basically, it's like I swap out the t-shirt, wear the same hoodie, same jeans, same shoes, pretty much depending on if it's bad weather, then I have one pair. If it's dry, then I have like my trainers that I wear. So it's all like there's no thought behind it. It's the same thing like Steve Jobs did it. I think Mark Zuckerberg does it. I don't know. Yeah, same thing every day. There's one decision you don't have to make, and it's massively important. Like there's only so many good decisions we can make. So Baumeister has this whole thing where our lack of willpower is due to energy and like glucose in the blood, because there are massive associations with that. And this doesn't mean just like bomb sugar whenever you need it, but that's why we get a lot of sweet cravings when we need to go through, like say we need to finish this write-up task. What do? We get those sugary drinks, we get those M&Ms. For me, it's M&Ms. Like I actually just get a pack of M&Ms like and just work throughout the night kind of thing, because it's related to glucose in our blood and the levels of that and stuff. But the thing is that using sugar is the worst way to hide that requirement of energy to sustain the energy of concentrating and stuff. He says himself that having something more slower release, like protein, is the best. It's slightly slower working. With sugar, it's like instant, straight into your blood, instant reward kind of thing, and just the whole addiction cycle with sugar and stuff. So it's not ideal, but in certain cases, like that knowledge now, it's like, okay, that kind of makes sense why everyone when they're struggling to finish something, they just start eating bad. Or at least for me, I start having the massive temptation for M&Ms or like minstrels, just to have sugar constantly whilst I'm working on something, just like throughout the night if I'm putting an all-nighter or something. But I have realized the days where instead I just have a nice proper meal of like, decent amount of protein, decent amount of fat and stuff, just satiate myself properly and provide myself with the energy that way, it's much more consistent, because you'll be crashing up and down, waxing and waning to a next level with obviously the sugar. But the whole decision fatigue and everything. So there was a study of the judges basically and the decisions they would make. So a bunch of people, prisoners who were on potential, appeal for, what's it called, like parole, when they're allowed to go out, but on certain restrictions and stuff. Basically, the ones in the morning, so say if you had, like, the judges had to go through 40 prisoners throughout the day and, assess their case and, the whole court, whatever. And you would expect them, being judges, to act with justice and apply equally to everyone, depending on, the facts and figures objectively, and give their decision that way. However, there are massive, like, basically, the ones who came in the morning, who were the first people in the morning after they've just had breakfast, they were the ones you were like 50% more likely or 40% more likely. Don't quote me on that. Basically, you were much more likely to be given parole if you came in the morning. If you got later in the morning, near lunchtime, you would be far less likely, massively less likely, even if you had the exact same case, like pretty much identical, same crime, same current sentence period, you are much less likely to be given parole. Why? One, because of decision fatigue. They've been having to make decisions and use a lot of willpower to make the correct decision, concentration, focus, be like, it's hard work. And because they're declining, one, in terms of energy, glucose from their breakfast or whatever, that's going down. And they've been having to make decisions and apply restraint and, like, figure things out. Because if they personally just like the person, they think they're a good person and stuff and they deserve it, but, they would act more restraint and they would give parole to people who would be, it'd be more risky, right? So what they would do is they would just give the safe option and be like, the safe option is just let them keep them in prison because I don't have the mental. They obviously didn't know, like, it was because that's the whole thing with decision fatigue. However, straight after lunch, they come back the next session. Basically, the ones at the beginning of that would have their, like, paroles given more freely, or at least they were more lenient in giving it. Maybe because they were, be able to assess it better. But again, the ones who had very similar cases later on, pretty much not going to happen. Like, so that's why decision fatigue is a massive thing, because it requires concentration, focus, willpower to make the decision overall. So
I'm aware of the time element to the episode, but I do have a couple of things I did kind of want to quickly ask you as well.
Yeah.
If that's all right.
Yeah.
How much time do you reckon we have?
Just however long. I guess we'll edit things later. So
okay. So one would be the Pomodoro technique of studying. Just very briefly, do you think that's a good or a bad way to approach work during a revision period, particularly?
I think it's a good way to assert, like, it depends on how you use it. So basically, I think the way you should use it isn't just a be all end all, like, 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off, 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off, and just keep doing that constantly. That's the incorrect way. I see it as a tool to help you get started and enter the zone when you're, say, struggling with work, or like you're just being a bit distracted, or I would use it in the way where I would come down, sit down, and I'll just set 25 minutes and I'll just start working, right? 25 minutes, nothing else, just start working. And then say if I'm just feeling I'm really struggling in those 25 minutes, then when the 5 minutes come, like the alarm goes off basically, then I was like, okay, I'll take my 5-minute break and then I'll go back onto it and just 25 minutes back on. But the utility of the Pomodoro technique comes in helping you get into the zone, right? By applying bouts of large concentration on the task to help you just get into the zone. But so usually after the second or third, so I think the traditional one is after the second, so you do 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off, 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off, then it's 55 minutes or 50 minutes on, 10 minutes off, because those first two were to help you get into the zone. So what I frequently find is just out of training, and I've just been forcing, like, just, all the habit formation and stuff. When I come down to sit and work, I'm usually be able to get straight into the zone within around 5 to 10 minutes. Not all the time, but frequently. So I don't really use it anymore. But on the days where I find it hard, I'll just, put on the, like, man, okay, fine. I'll work for the next 25 minutes at least. Yeah. But a lot of the time I'll find 15 minutes in, I'm in the zone. The alarm goes off. I just turn it off, continue working. Do not break the zone if you're in the zone. So it's to help you get into the zone. And if you're in a distracted state of mind and you're struggling to focus, use it and use as many 25 minutes to get into the zone. But if at one point the 25 minutes is over, but you're feeling good, you're in the zone, you're in the middle of something, like you're doing what, turn it off, just continue. That's the utility of the Pomodoro technique, at least from my perspective. And that's where it's really powerful. But over time, you'll get used to just you'll start realizing, oh, within the first 25 minutes, I hit the zone, like say 20 minutes in. So when the alarm goes off, I just turn it off and I just continue. And then eventually you won't even need that, or like you have to minimize how much you use it because you're like, you just sit down, start working, you just get into it. So that's the utility of the Pomodoro technique, I think, well, for me at least.
It's very interesting. I think I do use it when I'm not in a good flow. So if I work really badly, then the next day I tell myself, okay, maybe I should try and use the Pomodoro technique a bit today. So yeah, and I like how you say that we shouldn't just live by it when we're working. If you like the technique, it doesn't mean that you need to work by it. If you're in a good flow, if you're in a good state of mind while you're working, then yeah, continue going. I agree with that. And I try and do that too.
Yeah, because our most efficient work is when we're in that hyper-focused next level in the zone state. You don't want to break that. It's just a utility to help you get into that. So it's the same thing with, just checking your phone or something, or just getting that ding whilst you're just in the middle of something when you're in the zone, like from your phone, man, it can break you out the zone and you do not want that.
So if you had to conclude this podcast with 30 seconds summary on how you think is best to approach studies, let's do it in a study context. Because I know you want to do a whole episode, another episode after you've finished reading this book, sort of summarizing what you've taken from those books. If for now someone's listening and they want to know, how can I increase my ability to work without getting distracted?
Okay. So first thing is try and find meaning in terms of why you're doing your work, what you're trying to gain from it in general, just your study in general, your course in general, right? Because that'll give you more meaning, more value from doing it.
So your exam is in 6 weeks. You got to learn this, got to go through these lectures.
Yeah. And you need the kind of like internal meaning behind why you're doing it or whatever. It could be a bigger thing, right? So I'm studying hard for this so that I become a doctor and, help save lives or whatever. Yeah. If you have that kind of motive, that will just help you get through the hard times. That's, I think, number one. And then all of the techniques to help you is just kind of what we spoke about. I always like to do things at the same time every day, because then your body kind of wakes up and it's like it hits 2 o'clock and you always study at 2 o'clock. You're like, oh, okay, I'm just going to start studying. So that's one thing. Try and keep consistent, similar environment every time. And yeah, using things like Pomodoro technique to help you get into the zone, but don't live by it.
No lyrical music. That's a big...
Yeah. Okay. I think we can discuss that one further, but I'm still against music overall. The only thing I ever use is like brown noise sometimes if it is particularly loud, but yeah, because it's just constant. We forgot to mention, but basically all of the fluctuation we pick up changes, right? With brown noise or white noise or whatever, it's just constant. So it doesn't really form, it just kind of mellows.
It's not in those 40 bits.
Yeah, it's 1 bit, right? So it's not taking up a lot.
But it's not even taking up 1, is it? Because it's like the clock ticking. You're not aware of it.
Yeah, eventually, you will just zone it out and you just won't even realize. But yeah, and then, just minimize all distractions. If you need to get those apps on your computer to turn off notifications or like block websites, get it. Put your phone on Do Not Disturb. Turn your phone off. Keep your phone in your bag. Don't even put it on your desk, right? Just put layers of resistance for you doing stuff. Yeah, the biggest resistance for going to the gym is actually going to the gym. That's why getting a gym that's close by is, a big benefit. And random stuff like that, going with someone, it's things that break down the resistance.
Well, so this has helped me a lot actually personally, because I'm not, I don't think I'm particularly bad, but I do get distracted quite easily. I get my work done, but I think I could be a lot more efficient with it. So
yeah, I'm all about working less but working efficiently. So you get everything done in a small amount of time, and it leaves you to just spend all of that other time either doing the other things you want to do, or pursue or study or just chill.
Well, I mean, thank you very much for helping me out here. This was like a therapy session.
Yeah, I mean, this was pretty impromptu. I mean, I didn't really cite anything properly, so I'll try and put references in the show notes and stuff. But yeah, don't take any stats I said for like the hard values, because I was just going off memory. I haven't finished my notes on those books, so that's just kind of a disclaimer coming at the end of the entire thing. But
I mean, if there's anything particularly wrong, we can always go back and just do a little editing, be like, hey, this is future Saban here. The number is actually 42.1 bits.
Yeah, or even after it's up, right? I'll just put the disclaimer right at the top of the show notes. So if someone checks that, they'll be able to see it like, oh, okay, I did actually make that mistake and I did address it. But yeah, once I've written out all of my notes and ideas and thoughts about these kind of topics, I've been into these topics for like 3 years now, but I've only really started reading the studies and the science and actually seeing the actual mechanics behind everything in the last like few months. So I'd like to go more in depth on it in the future. But yeah, if you enjoyed that, let us know. And who knows what we'll talk about next. So with that, Peace.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Getting It.
If you enjoyed this episode,
Or didn't,
then feel free to leave us a rating and review on the Apple Podcasts app or on the Apple Podcasts website.
we'd love to hear your thoughts, ideas, or questions about anything we discussed, so feel free to email us at thoughts@gettingit.co.uk.
You can also reach us on Twitter or Instagram at gettingit_pod.
You can find all the links in the show notes.